In this video, we're going to be looking at the species profile for Geosesarma Notophorum, more commonly known as the White Mandarin Vampire Crab. This is one of the rarer Geosesarma species in the hobby, and it's also one of the most delicate and hardest to care for. There's also a little bit of ongoing confusion regarding the naming of this species, as it's often mislabeled as Geosesarma pontianic. As is typical with Geosesarma species, not a lot of information is available, and what information is available is quite hit and miss, with a large chunk of that information being AI generated by ChatGPT, which is causing major issues with data reliability. So I'm hoping to see some more official scientific papers come out in the near future with some solid facts. However, I've been successfully keeping this species for quite a while now, so I've got plenty of reliable real-world information to share for everyone hoping to keep them happy, healthy, and in captivity. So we're just going to jump straight into it. Distribution and habitat. While the exact locality of Geosesarma Notophorum isn't fully confirmed, they are believed to be native to a small island in Indonesia. Unlike most other Geosesarma species, White Mandarin Vampire Crabs rarely visit the water section. They also molt on land and prefer to spend most of their time up in the canopy and above the ground, making them absolutely perfect for any taller style enclosures. So if you are planning to build a tank for these guys, aim for something tall and make sure you detail it really well. Theoretically, you could also house these crabs in a vivarium style setup, similar to what you would use for dart frogs without a dedicated water section, so long as you provide small pools so they can access water to keep their gills moist when required. Behavior and social dynamics. As we mentioned earlier, males are highly aggressive, especially when in confined spaces, which increases the likelihood of fights, which then eventually leads to death. So providing a large enclosure for them is the only way to minimize conflict. Even in my large paludarium, which is 45 by 45 by 90, they'll still stumble across each other and fight. Interestingly as well, a lot of them will end up with one of the males throwing one of the other males from the top of the tree branches down onto the ground and quite often into the water section. So part of their battle system is generally flinging other crabs out of the treetops. From my experience so far, females are a lot less aggressive and also do seem to spend a little bit more time on the ground, living in burrows, though they also do spend quite a lot of time in the canopy foraging for food. Generally, these crabs are mostly active during the night, however they do spend a lot of time out during the morning and evening, during sunset and sunrise. So for keeping them in captivity, it's best to have a light with ramp up and ramp down options so you can simulate sunrise and sunset. They are also a highly aggressive species, particularly amongst the males, and they require at least twice the space of the other Geosesarma species to minimize male fighting. So I'd suggest a tank that's at least 80 by 30 by 30 centimeters or something even bigger, with an optimal tank being a vertical style enclosure for maximum comfort. We'll cover that in a little bit more detail shortly. Diet. Geosesarma Notophorum are omnivorous crabs just like the other Geosesarma species, and they do have quite a wide range of food preferences. They will consume most commercial fish foods, but they do particularly enjoy hunting live food such as isopods, crickets, springtails, and worms. So the more live food you can feature in their environment, the better. Having a mixed diet is super important for all vampire crab species, so make sure you factor that in if you're planning to keep them. Breeding and molting. Unlike most other Geosesarma species, Geosesarma Notophorum molts on land and not in the water. Whilst their molting process is quite different, their breeding process is still very similar to all other Geosesarma species. However, females don't spend as much time hiding in burrows or hanging around the water section. You'll also find that sometimes the babies will be clinging to the parents just before they drop when they're fully ready to go out on their own. Challenges keeping Geosesarma Notophorum in captivity. So if you are planning on keeping this species of vampire crab, there are quite a few things you need to take into account, and I'm just going to list the basics up on the screen right now, and I'll link a guide that shows everything in more detail in the description for you to check out as well. While a water section isn't necessarily required, these are the parameters you're going to need to follow in order to make one suitable if you decide to add one. Again, as we mentioned earlier, these crabs are super fragile, and it's considered one of the most delicate species in the hobby, and they suffer very high mortality rates during shipping, with up to a 95% death rate during the first 4 to 6 weeks after shipping. Due to the poor survival rates, it's definitely worth trying to find this species locally and avoid shipping them if possible. And also, if you're completely new to vampire crabs, I would avoid this species entirely and get something a little bit more forgiving like Geosesarma denala, pagan, Halloween, or tomato. Depending on when you're watching this video or not, I may also have species guides up for those as well. Otherwise, you can check out my general guide which is linked in the description. That will be perfect for all of those species. Conservation status. While there's limited information on the conservation status of Geosesarma Notophorum, it's more than likely going to be facing the same issues as all of the other species, which is habitat loss and overcollection. So if you've finished this video and are quite confident these are the crabs you want to keep, make sure you check out the following video because it's going to show you how to set up a perfect ecosystem to keep these guys successfully and eventually get them breeding as well. As always, if you found this guide helpful, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and keep an eye out for a few more guides on a few of the other species I'm keeping. You can also check out my website, which has this species profile as well as a ton of other guides, ebooks, posters, and whatever else you might be looking for.